Well, the clock's just toggled over to 1, so I'll get cranking. Welcome to the AIST3720 OS Concepts and Admin for the spring 2022 term. I know those of you sitting here are enrolled in the face-to-face section. I have a parallel online section, and I treat them both the same in terms of schedule and content. So we'll be here face to face, and sometimes that'll mean even being guide on the side rather than sage on the stage. Typically on Thursday, we have a lot of hands-on and how-to with the class, and then you can catch the lectures as I deliver them in the face-to-face class by being here. One thing, and just right off, I don't make a habit of taking roll. I know if you're attending and keeping up by what you turn in and deliver, so let me know maybe if you can't make it, but if you're not here, I'm not going to make a particular notation or do something about that. And by the same token, for those of you in the online class who will be consuming this by video, I'll video all these demos and that kind of thing and put them out in the agenda. Well, that's for the online class to partake, and then you maybe as a reference, you get back, oh, you did something in the class, let me go see what that was and that kind of thing. And you'll find that a lot of the content, the how-to, I've already put out there. If I found out that last semester or the semester before, I did a really good presentation on how to set up Apache basic authentication, and have a good rendition of that, there's no reason to maybe try again and flub it up. I'll let you look at that, and then we'll spend our time together patching things up. But welcome aboard, both to the face-to-face and online. I always halfway joke, if you're only going to remember one thing about the first day of class, remember how to get to this particular page. One way that you can get there just without having to log in, though it's a little bit to remember, if you go to Spots Augusta Edu, Spots is the server at Augusta that faculty have web space. And as you go to T. Schultz, you'll see it got redirected there, but this is my website for Augusta University related stuff. If you pull down on courses, and I'm only teaching one this term, 2 sections of AIST3720, you get here, you might make this a favorite in your web browser. I'm sure people all over the planet are just wanting to make this a favorite. No, temporarily. The other way to get to this homepage, and I really do try to center all the information I want you to get around this page, you can log in to D2L. Choose this course, and when you get over on the course, the one announcement that's going to stay there for the entire term is this AIST3720 usage guide, which basically says get to this course site, and that's where things will happen on the course site. The agenda, and maybe to an extent in the first week the syllabus, but really I always start from, and we'll see how I try to use the agenda to give you a one-stop. What do I need to be doing? What do I need to be reading? What's due? What's coming up? Are there any other announcements? The benefit of putting this particular page in your shortcuts or favorites is you don't have to go through the login process to D2L to get to this. Now, we will use D2L in the course. I use D2L when I need to know who you are. You're turning in assignments, you're doing quizzes, you're checking grades. That's all validation kinds of things. If you're just checking on, well, what's, the assignment, what's to read, can I see the video on Linux basic authentication? That's all here on this course site, and it's really open up to anybody on the planet, but I think you're a captive audience in the sense that getting here is, you'll have a need to. Most everybody else has maybe other things to do. I'm kind of true to my word, I guess. I'm clicking right in on the agenda for today. A little bit about how I roll. I sort of put out an agenda for every week. It's the week beginning, whatever the Monday happens to be, you'll see that, and I've got the first 3 weeks laid out as you scroll down. Got other weeks, to be honest, these other weeks, you can see that it's really copied from what I did fall term. And it's going to be similar but not exact. So I just have this warning here as if you're really trying to get ahead. You might look at this if you want to, where it gets below and gets gray to see what's coming up. But please don't start acting on that. I'll finalize it, try to get you 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6, several weeks ahead. But right now, I've just sort of opened up the first 3 weeks, and everything in that gray area is provisional. But you can see there's plenty of stuff to take action on, even as we're getting started. So the way I use the agenda for every week, there's a section, preliminaries and comments, and I kind of call these homeroom announcements. They kind of dwindle after the first few weeks, but they're things that you ought to glance at and maybe take action on, or it might not apply to you. Maybe we're having a guest speaker come over to University Hall for something, that kind of thing. And but this is kind of like a checklist, if you will. Make sure you can do these things. We're going to be using a textbook. We've got a little age on it about OS concepts, but it's something of a classic, and it's free is one of the benefits. So one thing to check on this week is that you can access O'Reilly books. You use your own login, your campus login for this. So this is just a note I put out online about doing it, and and I'll walk through it. When I have you read something, I'll probably link you right to the book. But when you land in O'Reilly, and it'll probably remember once you've logged in. It's a little different. That is a little different. Okay, probably should have practiced this. Okay, I chose sign in with SSO there. Okay, yeah, single sign-on. I'm sorry, they changed it. We're going to use single sign-on. What they do is they really are going to ping. You'll choose Augusta University, and then you'll see that you get your good old campus login complete, probably. Oh, good. It remembered. Some things Duo remember, some things it doesn't seem to remember, but that will get you there. And you have a great deal of resources available to you free out here. I have some specific things I want you to read. And as I say, I usually try to get you right to that chapter or that video. But if that doesn't work or something, this is the time to reach out and make that happen. So I'm already kind of diving into content. We'll get kind of back in the overview, but it's really by following the agenda, it gets me things I want to say. Be sure you can use Microsoft Teams, or I suggested it's a real good place to message me if you have a problem or an issue. There are going to be lots of hands-on in this course, and you'll be dealing with servers. You're maintaining some local virtualized machines on your own computer, and then we're going to turn and use some cloud VMs using Azure. And I can lecture and I can give a million here, what about this, what about that, but there comes times when, I've run into something, and that's when you can ping me, and Teams is a good place for that. Probably if we meet face-to-face, now that we have Zoom at Augusta University, I'll probably do that, but that's also a great thing. Let me know when you're available. Sometimes I just really need to see your screen, and and I can do it at random times, or we can make a date. It doesn't need to be just Tuesday and Thursday at 1 o'clock. That's when I sort of unpack the big picture, but I don't know what you're going to run into. And in fact, I was talking with a fellow yesterday. It's sometimes when you run into an issue and resolve it that you get more learning taking place than if you follow what I just call the happy path. That is, okay, I read the instructions, I did everything, it works, turned in, got a good grade. You maybe internalized a little bit, but it's maybe when something goes a little wrong that you learn a little bit more. So if you haven't ever used Teams and it's unfamiliar, it's a good place. Sending me an email is good also, and I do try to respond fairly quickly with either guidance or maybe we need to set up something. But kind of don't, gee, I ran into an issue, but I didn't want to ask, and that's why I didn't turn it in when the time comes. It's not a good way to make progress. An alert one for Mac owners, I really got two. Some of my older media is Windows media, and sometimes a Mac won't play those. You get a black screen and maybe you can't hear anything, but there's this video land, so if some of my videos aren't playing, that has cleared it up in every case. Another alert that I haven't written, but you'll see it in an email, if you're going to use a Mac for this course, doing your stuff, work at home, if it's somewhat recent and has an M1 chip, the Apple Silicon, you might have read where Apple had for a while, way back they had Motorola do their chips. Then they switched to Intel. But about a year ago or so, they switched and they developed their own chip, the M1 chip. And that's got lots of exciting features. One of the downsides is it won't virtualize some of the architectures that we want. And there are some workarounds if you have the M1 chip. And then once we go to cloud VMs, which will probably maybe be about 4 weeks from now to Tech Pracs in, then it really won't matter because the virtual machines will be living in, well, San Antonio probably in an Azure data site. But look for that. It'll be in the email. But if you're going to use a Mac at home, figure out what kind of chip it is, and that'll be in the email. If it's M1, just let me know I have an M1, and I'll collect. Last time I had like 2 out of 80, and we just had to do something a little different. Apple's slogan used to be "Think Different," and so sometimes with Apple Macs, you just need to do things a little different. Same thing on Windows; you have to do a little different. If you have a Windows box, and I haven't run into this issue, but be sure that your Windows box can virtualize. Most Windows boxes can. There might be a setting that you have to put in your BIOS, your basic input-output system, sort of the firmware when the system starts up to see if your Windows computer is available for virtualization. I think, is it on Performance tab? And I think that's where it was. Yeah, virtual is, yeah. So if you go to, I opened up Task Manager. If you've never used it in Windows, it just a good little thing, shows you all your processes. Went over to the Performance tab, and if it says virtualization enabled, you will be good to go and build virtual machines. And I haven't really defined what they are, a virtual machine. It's really using your computer's hardware to instantiate another computer. And it's not just emulating, it is actually using that hardware, so you have to tell your computer that you're using that it's okay if something else takes some of that resource. So a couple of things to do, and there is, to the textbook, a student companion site. There's PowerPoint for the chapters. We won't be looking at all the chapters. It's a little, we're not about the programming aspects of operating systems in this course. We're about the concepts, so some of it is, but there's, you can browse. I don't find the browse by chapter helps as much as, there's practice solution exercise solutions. So if you're kind of looking at the end of the chapter, say, I wonder how that goes, and PowerPoint slides that you can get. If there's something I want you to see, and many of the PowerPoint slides I just put into the in the agenda anyway when I'm talking about that chapter. All right, so kind of we started off, the agenda is a great place to go. Always look at the preliminaries and comments. Oh, and when we come in next week, I'll have just, with an anchor tag, the agenda will pop open to whatever week we're on. You realize you can always just scroll back and get to the stuff that's up there. Pretty simple, not doing anything dramatic web-wise. Second section in every week's agenda is what I call the read, study, execute, kind of your checklist of, okay, what should I be doing for class? And what you need to do is Some of it, if I say read a chapter, maybe I will never know whether you really read the chapter. You'll have some quiz on it, maybe you have to pull some content. So when I say you need to do this, this is the recommended guidance to get you where you need to be. And but one thing that you do need to do, if you haven't already, visit D2L, log into this course. The way I do take attendance, and the only attendance I really have to take is in the first couple of weeks, I need to report somebody who's not participating, so they can be withdrawn at the registrar. That has something to do with money and financial aid, and if we don't do it, then I think we pay. I guess the university does. So you'll probably visit D2L anyway, but please check that. I have your reading assignment. So here I have a link, and if you've already authenticated to O'Reilly Books, Safari Books, then this has gotten right into the preface. Okay, and there's not much. The preface is a little bit of what the book's about. It's got some great content. Will the world collapse if you don't read it completely? No, but I kind of say you're taking a major that's technology oriented. I don't know if it's IT or probably don't get too many computer scientists, cybersecurity. This aspect, operating systems and system admin, is kind of central to the whole shoot match. So if you're interested enough to say, gee, this is what I major in, then some of this reading ought to be okay. That's a little bit interesting, and I might do it even for a little bit of fun. But you've kind of seen then how I do try to make it a little, keep busy work off. You just kind of can take the link. There's some videos out in that Safari thing, so I ask you to look at this Linux administration bootcamp. We're going to be doing server admin with Linux and with Windows Server, trying to show parallel comparisons where they differ a little bit. Probably the Ubuntu flavor of Linux, and you can maybe argue it really is probably the one that's most widely used out there in practice, though I know there's some mystic about some of them. Anyway, when you take this link, it will link you to in its videos. One thing I had to do was, and I have some notes in there, I think it's muted as a default, so you can unmute it. It's actually going now, and you can't hear it. I did find out that you could speed it up, and I could speed it up to 2 or 1.5, 1.75, and you can get through it quicker. And studies have shown it actually that listening to a sped up video for something where you're learning, the learning actually gets better. Sometimes, like I'm speaking and I get off and you make a side comment, you can pay a little closer attention by cutting out some of that dead space, just a thought. Volume, speed it up. And it goes to the next video. So, I'm just having to do the course overview today, but next week there's some others, but you can kind of go ahead and spin those up, or choose the choose the parts maybe that, okay, I know a little bit about Linux, but that's interesting, but just something to give you, and it's a better tour probably than I could give. Maybe not better than I could give, but it's a real good tour, so why should I give you one when you have one there? And this is really just a web article, and it kind of gets into sort of the Windows Server and how it's different than Windows in general, though, boy, a lot of things, Windows 10 and Windows Server since 2016 have a lot of commonalities, except for there's places where the server is beefed up. Unfortunately, this has a little bit rife with some ads, so don't buy anything. Don't give your credit card number. These movies aren't there, part of the content. Just read. Yeah, at one time I thought Windows 10 was going to be Microsoft's last Windows, as they make major releases, and they'd still call it Windows 10, even though there were some, but they do have Windows 11 that I think is maybe out there. So far, I would not, certainly not in the middle of a term, see about and do an operating system upgrade if you can avoid it, right? And we have our first assignments actually due this coming Sunday. All the assignments in the course are due on, on Sundays at midnight. In most of them, not the first one, well, not the 0th one, but in 1 through 8, there's a quiz you take in D2L as well. But mostly what you do in this course is develop assets, files, screen caps, text output, scripts, script outputs, and you give me those in D2L when you're done. And a little bit about how I try to work on the assignments. So notice that if I go back to the agenda in content and presentation, all right, this is what we're working on right now. And as soon as I have this, I'll probably upload it to YouTube and then make it a link that you can look at again, or for those that are taking it online, would look at it the first time. But I also put out content that helps you, well, it's like the lectures, okay? And I try to, if they relate to a specific assignment, let you know that. So, for instance, see TechPrac 00 item 1. All right. If you go to TechPrac 00 and look at item 1, I try to. I'm not always perfect about this, but I'm getting better. I try to reference back to that, maybe that same lecture or demo. So, my suggestion is, kind of use the agenda like, well, I'm going to class, I'm watching this, I'm learning, and then I go to the assignment, and here it is as a reference. On the other hand, I was a student once, and sometimes what you do is, well, what do I have to do? And then can I back into what I need to read or what I need to kind of view or absorb to get there? So I leave it up to you. But I'm trying to say I'm not doing something tricky here, or of making, embedding it here but not putting it somewhere else. If it looks like that, then it was by accident. I think you'll find this a fairly straightforward. You're going to prepare a Word document that walks me through the capabilities of the computer that you plan to use for this course, if you have one. I'll never know if that was really the computer, but how much memory, how much disk space, clock speed, your internet capability. And this lecture kind of talks about them, and there are references in here on, well, how do I check that on my computer? And you'll be collecting all the results, in this case in a Word document. And I want two things for each capability. A screen cap from your thing that says, if you say your clock speed is 1 megahertz, okay, some screen cap of where in the system did you find that, system information or about my computer or whatever, but also put it in words. It's not enough just to say, well, there's a screen cap, you figure it out. Well, there's the screen cap, and I figure it out. As you can see, or just, my clock is running at 1 megahertz. I have 5 gigabytes of memory. I have 10 gigabytes of space. I want you to kind of put something in your own words. It doesn't have to be long. One sentence can probably cover them all, but two things, the words and, something that, here's what I looked at to get that information. And when you're done with that, and you've probably been through this before, when it comes time to turn that in, just in D2L, you go over to assignments, click on whichever TechPrac it is. Oh, by the way, if you click on the TechPrac in D2L, you'll find that the instructions link you back to the same TechPrac 00 in this case, that we're already looking at. So I have two ways to kind of get there, but it won't be like, oh, when I go to D2L, I'll find something different. But mostly it will be uploading files. And so and you don't need to upload all the files for a TechPrac at one time. You can, if you want, collect them all and then upload them together. But if you finish item 1 and want to upload that, and then a couple of days go by, and then you finish item 2 and want to upload that, sometimes there's multiple uploads in a thing you can. So you can do multiple uploads. Not a whole lot of drama there. The one thing that you want to do, be sure of, and I'll just pick, I'm picking out, it happens to be a recommendation, but you just go in the file system wherever you saved it. Then if you click Add, it looks like it's there, but realize it's not really up there in D2L where I can see it until you click Submit. At this point, you could still knock it out. Once you submit, it turns out you can't knock it out, even if it's before the due date. If you run into the situation where, oh, I just realized something, I have a better version of this deliverable, then just upload the second version. I'll usually kind of go by the latest date if there happens to be. To me, it's a little bit odd that it won't let you pull something back before the due date. I can see maybe after the due date we don't, but realize that you have to submit to actually then make that part of it. And later on, if you're kind of curious, if you go to, if you go to assignments, it'll remind you that you have one submission, one file. And if you're curious about, well, okay, what did I submit? I kind of forgot, did I put them both up there? You can always do this. You can always download and see what you've submitted if you just want to, and as many submissions as it takes to get that up there. All right, so a little bit of D2L mechanics, probably you have it, and if not. So this is a document. This one, you're going to send in a few text files. We'll look at it a little bit here. It has to do with assembler language, but a real light introduction that you're going to be working in a simulator. And there's a video and some stuff at the end of the class, and I guarantee, even if you I don't like coding and I've never done assembler, that does not mean you kind of can't do this. It's one way, and an important concept for this class is to realize at what a low level the computer is operating when it's taking care of operating system and admin kinds of tasks, and this gives you a sense of that. But we'll talk about the how-to. Well, there's actually a how-to here, and these are some links to the assembler itself and that kind of thing. But always read the instructions closely. So there's going to be some assemb1.txt that you create that you add to the assignment in D2L. And it really helps me if you try to name these things. I might have 60 or 70 or 80 students in a class, and if everybody comes up kind of with their own name for this particular file, I download and I look at, and I have a file folder of all your deliverables, and it's nice to know I can just click on this and know what I'm getting. So I usually give you a name that I want for this, and I try to highlight it. Now, if you get into a question, great, I know what, but I need some help with how. That's where you can reach out to me. So you'll actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 text files and a JPEG or GIF. When I say JPEG or a picture format or other image format, I'm trying to be. But some things in this class that happen on your computer, I don't have any way to really know, or even in your VMs, unless I get, I almost need a screen cap. There is no good way to get that. That's one of the nice things when we go to cloud VMs and you give me some admin mojo on your computer, I can start that computer up in the cloud and I can log in and check, have you set it up right for myself, or I can write a script against it. When it's a VM sort of living on your own device, that's not as possible. All right, so I can do a lot of course overviewing, just talking about the agenda. So we've talked about preliminaries and comments every week, this read, study, and execute checklist. That's kind of the background reading. The content and presentation is going to class, and it'll be mostly maybe videos or references, links to videos or references, and a lot of times they're kind of paralleled with then what I ask you to do back by way of deliverable. And we've already seen how maybe the tech prac tries to link back to the same materials in case you go that way. But the idea is going to class, even if you're online or you can't be here, I'm just saying, okay, well, you have apprised yourself at least of all this before you dive in and say, I'm trying to get the stuff done, because maybe getting the stuff done won't make as much sense until you've looked at some of that. All right. Let's see. I think I've got most of the processes and rules, and well, at least how to get things done. You do have a link to a syllabus here. This is the term syllabus in the sense of, here are the tactics for this particular course. If you need something or you're just interested in, well, what are the learning objectives and what is this course kind of about? Or sometimes to get refunded, like VA benefits and that kind of thing, you need a content-oriented syllabus. I took the link to the common syllabus if you'd like to review that. Some of this might not make, at the end of the course, okay, yeah, I understand what that means right now. It's hard. You'll notice that I have a lot of links open up in new tabs. There's some that web people that say you should never, ever, ever do that. Or if you do it, maybe give the person notice, by using a glyph like this so they're clear that it opens in a new window. I do a lot of that so you have your original context, and without having to hit back. But you end up sometimes, if you're doing a tour with lots of windows open, just close them and you can figure that out. All right, you'll need a reliable computer, relatively recent operating system outside of class. You can do this course on class computers, and I would ask you maybe if you are planning on doing that, well, I think you're going to need a portable hard drive to hold your VMs, because your virtual machines, realize, are going to have disk space comparable to a newly installed PC, and they need to be there somewhere. But by making it portable, you can go from campus device to campus device. But most students, kind of do the work on home computers, just because that's when they can be there. If you're having trouble with your computer, and it always kind of comes up because these VMs do press the computers a little bit in terms of their capabilities. The number one problem students have run into is actually disk space on their computers, especially on Macs, and they just use it up because they're holding hard disks for two computers and that kind of thing. When we talk about building VMs starting next week, there are some guidelines in the documentation about, well, how much space should I have to be careful. So I have this kind of claim, getting your computer to work is on your shoulders, but reach out and maybe I can help. And there have been very few problems that we couldn't resolve if something isn't working. I'm Todd Schultz. I don't have an office. I worked for 30 years and then in 17 retired, but I've been in this rehire, happily teaching a couple of courses a semester since. So I'll be in here by noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays, probably just out in that lobby area, maybe in here, but there's a class in here just before. But making an appointment, it's more convenient actually for me to meet at random on Somerville campus. I live about 2 blocks away, but Zoom or Teams, schedule a time. If you say, gee, I'd like to meet, it might help to give me 2 or 3 times. My first response would be, okay, can you give me 2 or 3 times where it might be good? But sometimes maybe I'm right there, and might send out a Teams, and I've handled more than one thing. I'm doing something else, but ping, and we get it done. But please reach out early with questions or issues. You run into it, maybe take a look at the assignment early. The DUE date for an assignment isn't necessarily the DO date for the assignment, right? So the due date doesn't have to be the due date. I know there's going to be a tendency maybe to wait till that Sunday when it's due and hope for the best. Maybe take at least a peek at it during the week so you can get issues resolved. And that said, late policy, if you run into something, let me know early, as soon as you can, what the issue is. And probably without asking anything, I'll give you a week extension on a tech prac. Okay? Now, it's important if you've run into something and can't deliver it by the due date that you get whatever you couldn't resolve resolved. Where I really start to gripe is, you gave me the extra week, and I finally looked at it, and it's the Monday after the extra week, and here's what I didn't understand. That's when I just, I used to have a full head of dark brown hair. So kind of look at these assignments, and they are practical and hands-on. something that you're doing for a client who needs it the Monday that we're coming, after it's due. And that's when I hope to be grading them to give you some quick feedback. But stuff happens. Life stuff happens. Opportunities, okay? Ski trip, something like that. Sometimes I don't need to know the details, but I need you then to be sure that in that next week you clear up whatever it is. Maybe it's just more time. Maybe it's the issue you ran into. And sort of think of it as a badge of professionalism. Got it done right, on time. Client is happy. That's how you're going to make money in whatever job you take, and many of you are probably working already. But as I say, I'll be out here by noon before class. I can hang around a little after class if something comes up by appointments. There is a contact link on my homepage too. I guess I don't really have. Do I have a contact? Yeah, contact is there on the homepage for the course. And you can reach out there. You can actually send me a little message, which actually just a little web thing that will email me this, some contact information and all like that. So trying to think, let's see, syllabus. Yeah, I've kind of been through, I think, the course mechanics, and I hope if that's anything that's not too clear. I don't know if I have the right link on that. The agenda link is the best place to go. If you look at all the points for the course, they add up to 1,000. Okay, the most tech pracs have 5 items. One of them is a quiz. 4 of them are hands-on things. Each are worth 25 points. But we've got a couple of places like the first one where there's only 50 points. Anyway, it adds up to 1,000 points. If you clear 900 points, 901 or better, by the time we're done, you'll earn an A. 801 to 900 a B, and 701 to 800 to C. And that's pretty much everybody in the course. I'd already talked about, the goal is you getting the right items in the right place at the right time in the right condition, the so-called rights of logistics, okay, which we're having, supply chain, and we're having problems getting the right things in the right place at the right time. And I see Amazon has backed off 2-day, shipping and lots of other things, and plenty of this, but not much of that. Chicken out at Lidl, according to my wife, she did the shopping the other day, are well down. So it goes. But your role, the way you get evaluated, the way you learn, in my opinion, is by completing these things and getting there. Do pay attention which tech prac to upload into. If you accidentally put a tech prac 1 item in tech prac 2, let me know. I am smart enough I can get over there. But too much of that, it starts slowing me down. Grading is probably the most time consuming because it's really where we finally meet, and I see what's going on, and most of the time it's great, you did it, but sometimes it's okay, this is something you need to go back and work on. On uploads, some students like to zip all the deliverables for a tech prac into one file and upload that. That's okay by me. It actually causes me a little bit more work that way, but not so much more that if that's a good way for you to organize your work, you have a tech prac 00 folder and you put all your deliverables in, and then when it's good to go, you just zip it and send that one upload. I'm fine if that's a good way for you to organize, but you could just do the same thing, but then just upload all the files in there, and yeah, it works the same. The thing is, I get the download of a zip, then I have to unzip a zip within a zip, and maybe 15, 20 extra seconds. Nothing too dramatic. Kind of talked about the late work. Don't do it. If it's chronic, then there's probably something going on that we need to address. But sometimes you don't know till you tried it, and you did make the DO date, the DUE date, and that's where learning takes place. Let's get it resolved, but make sure you take the time that week to get it resolved. There's a rule of thumb for university classes. If it's a 3 semester hour class, then think about 8 hours a week spent on class stuff. It's sort of a 2 or 3 hours outside of class for every hour inside of class, and we're nominally scheduled for 2.5 hours. I don't know if it'll take that long for you. For some students, it'll take more than others. For some activities, might just take more than others. But especially for the online students, but even you, kind of when is your AIST3720 time. Schedule in, okay, and it is going to be, I'm going to look at things on Wednesday afternoon for a few hours so I can ask questions on Thursday, and then I'm going to do it on Saturday morning so I can go out and, have fun Saturday night knowing I've got everything resolved, or I have issues that I have one more day to do. I don't know, but the biggest, I hate to use the word failure, lack of succeeding, which is, I guess, another way to think, where students run into problems is not completing the work and kind of getting behind. And the assignments do build. We're going to build a virtual machine. Then we're going to start configuring that virtual machine to do more dramatic things, web pages, databases, nothing unearthly. But if you're still struggling with way back on, getting that VM going, it's just hard then to pull you forward. So maybe find that time. And important academic honesty policy. You can take the link and look at it. Anything that you upload should be something that you created. Now, the way you learn, the way you get through, the way you become a system admin isn't to figure it out all yourself in a bubble. You ask, you read around, how do you configure basic authentication in a Linux server? It's not something that you can find books. So collaboration is really encouraged. How did you do it? Maybe you both sit down side by side and do it. But if you submit me, something, a pic, a document, a text file, I'll assume that you generated that yourself, and up it comes, not, gee, you've done it well. Can you go ahead and submit that same thing for me? Here's my D2L login. And I have a couple of ways in the course to check that. You'll be in your VM. Your VM's going to have its own unique host name, and a lot of times I ask you to give me the host name. And it's probably easier to do the way I want than it is to try to say, well, okay, how can I get around this? And then I come back to the thing, you chose this major. A lot of this stuff is, if not fun, interesting. Maybe I don't want to do websites or see how databases work or learn scripting and that kind of thing, but some of it ought to be attractive, and all of it's important for you to have an awareness of. So basically it's like, oh yeah, I bought a ticket to Disney World, but I'm not going to bother with the rides. I'm going to let somebody else do. That's maybe they're not quite as fun as Disney World rides, but some of it is. So if you give it to me, then it's something that you completed. Collaboration is so encouraged. Alrighty, and so that's the rules and regulations. And kind of any questions? I think it's straightforward. Great. So I was this on screen caps. It happened maybe about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago in the fall. It's better if you do screen caps on your system, not take out your phone and snap it. Okay. Better, usually it's more complete, more legible, and that kind of thing. And I'd always kind of gotten those, and then I started getting, and if that's the only way you can do it, or you're trying to maybe make a video, but there's always a way to make a video if you need to, or a screen cap. So I do have some guidance if you don't know how to capture your screen on your computer or part of the screen, then a couple of links, they're just a little bit more legible. We've already done the Access Online tools. You should have gotten or get soon, and we'll revisit this Tuesday, and then it will be important, but an email from No Reply Kavuto for virtualization hypervisor, okay, VMware, that's going to run these virtual machines. You'll need a login, and you have a free one, or you have a login that gets you free software. It's something called On the Hub, and it would be this Kavuto email that walks you through the process of setting up your login so you can download the product and license keys. And I'll say right now, if you're on an Apple with an M1 chip, then we're going to have to vary how we do the virtualization, but it won't hurt to install it. It'll just not virtualize very well. And VMware is working on this virtualization with M1. It's it's an ongoing thing. You should also visit the Azure Dev Tools for Teaching and sign in. And first time, maybe you'll have to register with your Augusta Edu credentials. We have an agreement with Microsoft that lets you get access to, among other things, Windows Server, Microsoft SQL Server database, other software, Microsoft Project, Microsoft Visio, for free. And it also gives you a $100 a year credit for Azure, their cloud platform, where what we're going to do with some of that money is let them host the VMs so we don't have to worry about it. But go through that, and if something comes up, maybe reach out to me individually. All right. Did I kind of leave any questions on, so plenty to do, but by claim, maybe not a claim, by seeing everybody sort of nodding, you know how to proceed and you know where to go. Ping back to me if something comes up. All right. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and go from about the course to some content. And a great tool I found recently, and keep in mind that you have maybe a more complete, rounded out video that tied a little more to the tech prac down here. But I do want to apprise or get started and talk some about this 8-bit assembler simulator. This is actually something somebody wrote, the background in JavaScript. Anybody had assembler yet? Well, good. So now you can say, at least I've been exposed to assembler. But what you ought to realize that every computer fundamentally operates this particular way. This over here is the computer itself, okay? You probably heard the heart of a computer is its CPU, Central Processing Unit. That's where everything the computer does takes place. I'm going to do a little bit of something right here, go get a simpler program, then we can get back to this. So I have a little bit of code snippets. And you can do Control A, and then paste in Control V to put in. This is just a simpler program than they had in there. Okay, so good. Well, what are we looking at in terms of, in this assembler? The registers. These are things A, B, C, D, and some special purpose registers are where the work can take place. This computer happens to be an 8-bit computer, okay? Most computers now are what? 64-bit. So when somebody talks about a computer being an 8-bit computer, it means every storage location and the registers can hold a maximum of 8 bits or 1 byte. Now, what can you store in 8 bits or 1 byte? Well, you can store a character. You might have heard of ASCII, the ASCII code, American Standard Code for Information Interchange. So one thing you can store in a byte is a character. So let me get down to some actual characters, like the character capital A. Its ASCII code in decimal is 65, okay? Its ASCII code in binary, well, is 65, but I hope you've seen a little enough of binary that you could puzzle this out. The way binary works is this rightmost digit is 1s, the next over is 2s, the next over is 4s, the next over is 8s, the next over is 16, the next over is 32. Just like in base 10, we have 1s, 10s, hundreds, thousands. In binary, it's 1s, 2s, 4s, 8s. And so, deciphering this, and we're not going to spend a whole lot of time deciphering binary, but you ought to realize that that's how the computer thinks. It's its native language. So that 1 right there says, I want 132, 0, 16, 0, 8, 0, 4, 0, 2s, and 1, 1. And 64 plus, I said 32, I probably should have said 64. 64, no 32s, no 16s, no 8s, no 4s, no 2s, and 1, 1. And if I can add that all up, then it really quote means 65, because 64 plus 1 is 65. We have a bias toward base 10. I guess maybe because we have 10 digits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, counting on hands. The Sumerians counted on their hands, and they said, the right base for counting on your hands is 60. And they counted on their hands, and you can't see this for those taking online, but they would count, maybe on their right hand, counting knuckles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I've counted, from my forefinger to my pinky, and it's 3. So I got up to, 12. Take my left hand and put one thumb up. That's 112. Okay, a single 12. So when I've got to get up to 12, I start over on the right hand, and it's really 13 for us, 14, 15, but I count, and when I get 12 more counted on this, I put up a second finger. And so for them, having 5 12s sort of was where they ran out of fingers, not 10, but 60. Okay, so there's nothing magic or inherently, just base 10 is the right one and everything else is something I just got to figure out. Oh, by the way, can anybody think of a base 60 system that we use all the time? Tick, tock, tick, tock. Right? Think about clocks, right? So 60 seconds make a minute. We're not surprised when it gets 60. It doesn't go 61. If we're looking at seconds on a digital clock, the minute increments 1. When we get 59 minutes, it doesn't go 60. It increments over to an hour. And so actually that ancient system really has played a role in the way we do time. That makes actually time on computers a little bit hard, and dates are even worse, a little bit difficult to handle. Just as an aside, the way the dates are stored on computers, at least nowadays, though, are in terms of a whole number of days since a fixed date, and the fraction is the fraction of the time will be a fraction of the next day. And there are ways you can kind of play with this in Excel, and date 0.5 is noon on that date, and on it goes. What you may be less familiar with, or you might be very, very familiar with as well. Let's see, I was looking at 65, just because it's an easy one to remember in character A, is this idea of hexadecimal. Binary is a little bit unwieldy to look at, so hexadecimal, base 16, was sort of developed, or it's a shorthand for it, and so 2 hex digits, and you can kind of tell the H out here. Sometimes they'll have a X to indicate that it's binary, but 4-1 hexadecimal is also 65 decimal. This 4-1 there seems 4 16s and 1-1, 65. So we've already talked about a couple of things that we can use binary for. We can use it to store numbers, right? If I look at look at a memory location, it's got 41H. That might be the whole number 65. Okay? I might look at that location and say, no, it's meant to be interpreted as an ASCII, and it's capital A. It might be an instruction, might be part of a picture, might be, and I don't know, when you think about scoreboards, like at high school football games, if you can make an 8, there's like 7, top, 2 sides, middle, 2 sides, and a bottom. There are 7 sides, if you will, or 7 lights that might be on in the diode, or think of a digital calculator, and it might be a representation of a digit that comes on a calculator. So that was kind of a thing to just to kind of say that everything is binary fundamentally. For us, it's usually, we would prefer to see it in decimal maybe, or hexadecimal, just because it's more compact. So this little computer has ways to view things in decimal, or hexadecimal, and you can choose that. So I've got a little program here, and it's kind of, just kind of all brand new. This, when a program is run on a computer, it needs to be converted to machine language, something that is all binary, and the computer understands certain binary patterns to be instructions. You can add labels, okay? Think of like go to or kind of loops. And so the syntax over here says I've got a label and it's called top. And syntactically it knows it's a label because it has that colon after it. And what this program does is first it increments A. And what that means is register A will have 1 added to it. It's just an instruction available in the instruction set. If we go look, and we don't really have to go there, but if we look at the instruction set, the kinds of things a computer can do or an assembler can ask a computer to do that convert to machine language are move between registers and memory locations. You can add to registers, you can increment registers, you can decrement registers, you can do multiplication, whole number multiplication, floating point can be done. It takes some advanced chip work. This assembler's not up to it. You can divide, that's integer division, and you probably get a whole number and a decimal point. You can AND registers, how are the bits alike, and some things that we really don't need to get into. But just appreciate that the things a computer can do are limited by its instruction set, its machine code instruction set, and there's a one-to-one relationship between assembler statements and that machine code. Well, great, that all makes sense. So this code says, well, let's increment register A, and by kind of just default, what the computer is going to do is go to the next statement, unless there's a statement that says, oh, I need to jump somewhere else. Okay, and maybe that jump will be based on a condition of a comparison I've made earlier or something like that. Then it's going to decrement B, subtract 1 from whatever is in register B. And everything that's going to be calculated needs to be done in one of these registers. And then it's going to jump back to top, which is this label. Okay, so that's code I placed in there. I'm going to click assemble. Well, first of all, notice we got all zeros over here. Right? When I assemble, it's not all zeros anymore, okay? This 18 and 0, 18 is the machine code instruction that says increment. The 0 mean it needs a second byte telling it, okay, well, what do I increment? A memory location? The 0 there means, oh, do it to register A. Okay? And that's just convention built into the system. The 19 here says decrement, and the 1 that follows it, this is not something we have to remember, it's something we're going to just appreciate. Oh, that's register B. What do you think the address for register C is? It would be 2, right? And this 31 means jump, and it turns out that top, since I kind of had it right there at the beginning of memory, happens to be memory location 0. So let's talk a little bit about RAM here. Yeah, let's show that. There was a way to show the addresses. Let's talk about this memory that we have. So each one of these locations is 1 byte. They've got 16 in a row, okay? So each row has 16 bytes. So altogether we've got a, whatever 16 times 16 is, I should be able to do that. Huh, that's weird. I thought it would do it. Oh, maybe if on a web search. Web. Over here. What is 16 times 16? Alrighty, you're going to make me do it. I could open up calculator times 6. Okay, so we have a 256 byte computer. The maximum memory of this computer, that it can hold, is 256 bytes. Well, I've assembled this program, and if I were to run it, and we'll run it shortly, then it would try to execute it. If I'd made some error in, use something that it didn't understand, an assembly instruction that was invalid or didn't include a parameter command, it would tell you, not in great detail in this thing. But I'm going to step instead. So a couple of things. And I want to show this in hex. Good. Let's see, one thing to notice right now, IP, that's a special register that stands for instruction pointer. It's where the computer is going to go next to do the instruction. So it's going to say, when I step, I'm going to go to this memory location, find the instruction that's there, and execute it. Ta-da! It did it. How do I know? Well, notice that register A is now 01. It was O before, so it did increment it. Notice that the instruction pointer is now 02. And got to realize that these numbers start at 0. So this is memory location 0. This is memory location 1. This is memory location 2 in row 0. So think of this as 0001, 02. Down here it would be 15, 0, 15, 1, and this would be, or at hex location, it would be FF. So these memories have some registers as well. Notice B right now is 0, so I'm just going to step. And notice B, when I decremented it, became FF. So it was 0, and you subtract 1. Well, can you subtract, isn't that negative 1? What it does is roll over to the top, and you have the biggest value possible in a byte, and that's FF. Notice that the instruction pointer is now at instruction 04, which is this jump instruction, and that will, if I step, all that did was change the instruction pointer to say, oh, the next thing I'm going to do is repeat this instruction. So I kind of keep stepping. You'll see that register A goes up and register B comes down. Very exciting. You can run it, and the simulator will show you that, what's going on. And so what we have a program is at the very elemental level is incrementing A and decrementing B. And if we let it go long enough, A will get to FF, and when you add one more, it'll go over to 0, 0, and B will get that back down to 0, 0, and when you subtract one more, it will go up to the top. So we'll show one little bit more, and then you got some, what did I do with it here? Add some of that code in a window. This is where you get too many windows going on, and there we are. Well, I know what we can do. We can look at the program that they gave to us, and then maybe I'll kind of call it a halt there. If you just want to get back to, I just refreshed the page. This is the program they gave us. It does a few things. One thing that this computer has is, notice that the area that's highlighted down here, any values that are placed in those memory locations, and I think they begin at E7, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, E7 through FF will appear in the output window. Well, their ASCII interpretation will. So what this program does, which kind of is, wouldn't be the very place I would start, but we can see what it does. This jump start says the first thing I'm going to do is bypass all this, and I'm going to come down to here, okay? And what this area does is define some variables. So there's ways to, can I put some things in memory, and it's going to put hello world in a memory location that can be tagged with this hello, and then it's putting a 0 after that. That's going to be something where the computer understands, oh, am I done processing the string? Basically what this program does, and we'll have to assemble it, is takes whatever string is here and puts it over in the display. All right, and so we don't need to get, well, how would I have known to write that? And how can I even trust that, if I had to change it much, how it would go? We're not too worried about that. But what it does is move into the C register the address of where it's going to get things. And basically it's looping here through the code, then it's checking whether is the next character a 0, or is the binary value a 0. And if it is, then I'm going to stop and return. So I'm just going to run this because it's not too much drama. But what it's doing is patiently then looping through that text. And in fact, one of the first things that I ask you to do on the assignment, I'm not saying it's trivial, is just, I think it says something like, we'll change the program so it says, hello, your name. Okay. And so that one we were able to accomplish by just, okay, I kind of put it in here. Notice if I look at what it did, let's see, this trying to think, hello, blah, blah, blah. I was seeing if we can interpret where that's going to jump to there. It's the 0. I was trying to backtrack and find some, see if we could see some of these values. But part of the point, and I will let that other video then, and again, it takes you through all these examples, and what you end up having to do, I don't want to say is trivial, but it isn't as dramatic or complicated as kind of even their first example. And I kind of talk through what each of these guys is trying to do. And so it's a first exposure. And if you run into something, let me know. But most students kind of do well, but there's this little bit of, oh no, got to code in assembler, and it's really not quite that. All right, well, it's a little bit early, 9 minutes left. I kind of can tell by faces, either you got it or the brain's full. So if there are no questions, I'll just kind of stop. I'll be back on Tuesday, but don't forget, assignment due Sunday, and reach out if you run into problems or issues.